Breaking news tonight. U.S. officials believe North Korea was behind the computer hacking attack on Sony Entertainment. The officials telling NBC News the hacking attack originated outside North Korea, but that the individuals behind it were acting on orders from North Koreans. This news comes after Sony pulled the Interview movie today after the hacking group called Guardians of Peace vowed 9/11 style threats to theaters running the movie. It has a plot to assassinate North Korea's leader, Kim Jong-un.
The CIA would love it if you could take him out. Take him out.
Like for drinks? Like to dinner? Take him out in the town?
No, take him out.
You want us to kill the leader of North Korea?
Yes.
Tonight, the breaking news is that U.S. officials believe North Korea is linked to the hacking attack. Joining me now, MSNBC's Toure and former prosecutor and host of Judge Faith Jenkins. Thank you both for being here.
Thank
you. Toure, NBC News reports, quote, "We have found linkage to the North Korean government. This is a major development in this story." Your reaction?
Well, to see that the interview is now being pulled makes me think that Kim Jong-un suddenly has veto power over what goes into American theaters. That when he directs a group to say, we don't want that film out, and they make a threat, then suddenly it's going to be pulled. I don't like that. I don't like negotiating with terrorists. I don't like giving in to terrorists. That said, I understand why theater owners would say, hey, I got 25 screens, I got 5 screens, whatever it is. I don't want to put a picture in there that may test the sanctity of my theater.
But how significant is it to you that a government may be behind hacking in a huge American company?
Well, I mean, you know, we see that a lot, right? Out of China, right? Out of other countries hacking other corporations, right? I mean, that is normal. It's not good business, but it is normal business. But when you add the terrorism aspect, when they're saying we're going to put bombs in or what have you in your theaters, if you put out a silly farce, funny comedy movie. It's not some documentary that lets us know something about Kim Jong-un that we didn't already know. Comedy. It's a silly comedy.
Well, we've never seen something like this, Faith. The New York Times just posted a story saying, quote, senior administration officials who would not speak on the record about the intelligence findings said the White House was still debating whether to publicly accuse North Korea of what amounts of cyber terrorism campaign. Faith, is there any international legal action you can see on this hacking?
I don't think you're going to see that in this case, because why ratchet up the response of everyone involved? What you're going to see is, I mean, this is a cyber attack on Sony, not on the U.S.
Right.
And so what you're looking at here is when Sony decided to pull this movie, I mean, it really wasn't their decision. The movie theaters made the decision for them based on the fact that why should they?
Many of the theater chains started pulling out.
Right, and it's a no-win situation. Why should they subject themselves to the legal liability? Let's say that this threat was a complete bluff, but you have someone who's watching the news that sees it and they decide, oh, I'm going to go in and I'm going to try to act on this. And some lawyer's going to show up and say, listen, my client was harmed and you knew about this threat and you did not take the proper precautions.
But let me go back to you on Sony, Toure, because Sony's statement, which was the news today until about an hour ago when we got this with NBC News. And Sony said, part in quote, we respect and understand our partner's decision and, of course, completely share their paramount interest in the safety of employees and theater goers. If the theaters didn't pull out today, would the show go on?
Well, absolutely. I mean, if the theaters didn't act, if there wasn't this threat, it's not the cyber terrorism so much as the actual terrorism. If you didn't have that, then absolutely the movie would go on, without a doubt. I mean, to say that Sony pulled out is sort of like what we were talking about before, like, you know, when the bride leaves the groom at the altar and then the groom says, well, I'm not going to marry her. She's already gone, man. The theaters have already said, we're not going to show this movie. We don't want to take that risk. So Sony's pulling it, you know, maybe later. They say maybe later they'll do a theatrical release when the dust comes down. Maybe they'll put it out on demand. So, you know, we'll see. I mean, you know, America doesn't need to see this film. I want to see this film, but it's not some major piece of sort of, you know, filmic work that we must see it, that we've been cheated out of.
What, Faith, let me ask you, what legal action can we foresee from Sony?
Well, Sony has already been filed. They've already had 2 lawsuits filed against them. Now, what can they do in return? That's questionable. But what they're doing now is defending the suits against them. And the real question is, what did Sony know and when did they know it in terms of this possible breach? One of the main arguments is going to be really a question of foreseeability on behalf of Sony. Was it foreseeable that if they produced this movie and they made this movie, that hackers would come in and breach their personal records and data? I think that's a stretch to say that was reasonably foreseeable.
It seems that we know everything Sony knew and when they knew it already.
No, we don't.
Toure, you sound like you don't think this is a big deal. Director Judge Apatow says, Apatow tweeted today, quote, "I think it is disgraceful that these theaters are not showing the interview. Will they pull any movie that gets an anonymous threat now?" Is this a dangerous precedent?
No, it absolutely is a dangerous precedent, and I already said that I don't like Kim Jong-un having a veto over what goes into American theaters. Perhaps next, ISIS will say they don't want American Sniper to go out, and then people will say, well, we can't run that, we can't have people going into theaters and being afraid. So it is a dangerous precedent. I don't like negotiating with terrorists.
But it comes on
I
the heels.
understand that theater owners have to say, when people come into our house, they have to feel comfortable, because God forbid something happened in one theater, and then people were like, well, I don't feel comfortable going to the movie
but
theaters.
That's the problem, Faith, isn't it? That you can understand corporations being uncomfortable about employees and about theater goers.
Absolutely. It's a no-win situation for the movie theaters. Why would they put themselves at risk? They have other movies that they can show in the movie theater where this movie would be. They don't want people not showing up at the theaters at all because this one movie is there. But I will say this, Toure, had it not been for the pretty sophisticated hacking that took place at Sony, I don't think you would be seeing this reaction to this threat. Because of the sophisticated hacking that took place, I think they had to look at this seriously.
Well, it is big news that Sony has pulled the movie, and it's even bigger news that it is now being attached to a foreign government like North Korea.